This is the move on Bitcoin that so many are going to miss. I want to be bringing to your attention today a very nice triangle pattern forming on Bitcoin, how this affects altcoins. Right now, Ethereum trading $3,995, right on that big important $4,000 level. So we'll be taking a look at Ethereum too and a few different altcoins. I mean, this is going to be an action-packed video, but I do want to keep this under 10 minutes. So we'll see if that target's here. I've got to be quick here. Lots of stuff going on. So starting off here with Bitcoin. So as I was saying, this triangle pattern, why am I looking at the triangle? Well, because we held the higher low. Last week was a good one. We were declining all week long from Monday to Friday, down, down, down. And now we have seen a Saturday, well, a little bit of a rise with a lot of sideways, Sunday continuation. So you've got to be aware of a weekend move. A lot of people will say, oh, rise on the weekend, straight back down on Monday. I do not believe that has to be the case here. Let me give you my opinion anyway. So we are seeing a rise on a weekend, yes. Of course, we do have the CME Open, let's call it 4 hours from now. We are going to be seeing the CME Open, and we are very likely going to see a gap to the upside. Why? Because Friday, on that CME close, we were closing the market here. We are now trading above $109,000. So again, it's 4 hours to go till we open the CME futures. But if we are still trading above $109,000, then you are going to see this CME market opening, with a lovely gap to the upside. A lot of people, what will they do though? They will get very bearish on that, saying, well, that gap has to be filled. So the majority of the people are expecting that to come straight back down, as they will say, never long on the weekend. Okay, I'm not of agreement with that, but that is what a lot of people will be saying right now. Why am I not of agreement with that? Well, the first thing is, the number one reason here is you don't want to just trade off of some. Well, let's just say you never want to trade off of one thing alone. You always want to wait for confluence. And so when I ask you, do you want to take a long trade? Do you want to take a short trade here? Well, you have to come back to me with an answer saying, well, yeah, I want to take this trade because I got 3 strong levels of confluence. And I will always say, well, that's a very good answer. But if someone says, I'm going to take a short because we rose on the weekend, I'm going to be like, well, that's crazy. Why would you trade off of that factor alone? That is never giving you a good trade. Of course, sometimes you can rise on the weekend and drops. Other times you can rise on the weekend and continue to rise during the week. So, what I'm really emphasizing here is don't take a trade or a short trade just because we rose on the weekend. That is, in my opinion anyway, a very bad idea of trading in the long term. Again, we're all about long-term consistency. I would never trade personally from, we rose on the weekend, so I got a short. So that leads us on to where are some nice levels where if we are putting in this triangle, which is our low, back on Friday the 10th, and then the higher low put in, guess what? On another Friday, Friday the 17th, 7 days later. So we kind of got these higher lows building up. And for me, actually, $107,000 was very key on Bitcoin. It was a very, very, very key level. And now we have consolidated during the whole of Saturday, as you can see here, this support resistance flip. But ultimately, what happened here is what you call consolidation under resistance. So you consolidated during the whole of Saturday. Then you had this little bit of what we could really call a fake out on Sunday morning with our tight little range there, faking out to the downside before the reversal. Back tests, continuation. So I really do say that is a technical bit of price action there with the fake out, rise, back test, continuation. So anyway, consolidation under resistance with the fake out before this rise to the upside. So what are we looking at here in terms of, well, where would we start to say some key levels of resistance? I'm going to take two very, very, very key things for me, let's call it, and that will be these two downtrend anchored VWAPs. You can see the first one in the next few days is going to be coming in towards $113,000, and our more local one coming in towards, let's call it $110,500. So I will just add on, as I've been showing you before, the lovely fixed range tool here. You can see this lovely fixed range tool, which I'm not sure why my block size here is still being totally glitched out. This is not the block size that I used. Anyway, I'll sort that out a bit later. You can see the value area low is going to be lining up very nicely, to be honest, with that downtrend anchored VWAP locally. And over the next few days, this one is going to be making its way down towards $113,000 daily naked point of control, or if it takes a little bit longer, towards the range point of control. So this is where I start to say, well, these are some key levels of resistance. This is where I would open myself up, of course, to a short trade. I have, not shorted any of this rise at the moment. So, that's just something to bear in mind. But I'm not against shorting this. And I think if we are to put in a triangle, well, what do we look for? In a triangle, you got your low, you got your high, you got your higher low, you put in a lower high. And then at some point, this triangle is either going to get a lovely breakout to the upside, or of course, you can just simply get the continuation down to lower prices. This is a symmetrical triangle. I personally would say symmetrical triangle, you can view it as a 50-50 probability. A lot of people would say symmetrical triangle in this context is bearish. Why? Because it is a continuation pattern, and this is coming from the downside, sideways price action. A lot of people will say it will more likely continue downwards. I personally would always view a symmetrical triangle as a 50-50. Thus, we're not really trying to trade the triangle per se, because a 50-50 trade, I'm not trying to trade the triangle. What I'm trying to trade is, well, I have an outline of this price action, but I want to actually not necessarily trade the triangle, but I'm trying to take some good trades within that outline, if that makes sense. Okay, so I will happily look for a short off of resistance, just as I will look for a long if we get a pullback to support. So for me, I'm not really bothered about the overall break, let's say. I'm more bothered about the actual good trades within the triangle itself. If I can secure myself a long from the low and a short from the high, well then I'm in the best position possible, right? Where whichever way it breaks, I know I can make profits, and that's a lovely position to be in. So when I start to see, the confluence sat there between, let's call it at the moment on this, kind of speed trajectory that we're at, sat towards $112,000 zone, that's going to be lining up more towards that point of control. Okay. Of course, once we do have that pivot in, which again, this is not the pivot right now, right? So once we do have a strong pivot in, that's where we can then pull this top trend line and start to actually have this triangle form. Okay, so for me, that is very, very key. But likewise, what's also key is Ethereum. I actually believe Ethereum has been a major heads up of this rise. It's almost like Ethereum was leading Bitcoin, because it wasn't, I do not think it was Bitcoin showing massive strength down here, or in terms of a very good long trade. No, definitely not. But Ethereum, yes, Ethereum did put in very nice lows on that Friday, right? Where? At the exact zone we were waiting for. So this was a harmonic that we were looking at on the 16th. And then, of course, you put in your lows when? On the 17th, actually the next day. And this is where we took our long trades on Ethereum. So, yeah, during the move down on Bitcoin, a lot of people super bearish. They're going to take zero long trades across the whole of cryptocurrency. We recognize, well, yeah, there's some weakness here on Bitcoin. We are moving down, but we have got a plan. We have got an outline, and we are going to trade it. There was enough data to long the altcoins. So myself personally picked up a few different altcoin longs, of course, one of them being on Ethereum. And that was as we were putting in that low on Friday around New York. For me, a very acceptable long trade to be had. That same long trade, again, this is just one of my accounts, a smaller one that I use for the challenge account. That trade is now in $13,500 of profit. Again, this is let's call it 2.5 days later, right? So, $13,500 profit at the moment. And where are we at though? We are at this key level right now of where? 4,000. It's like a psychological level that we're on about. I was saying 2 days later, 10,000. Now we're 2.5 days later, 13,000. It's been going pretty nice. But this just really goes to show that when you come down to these strong support levels, as I was saying in my last video, trade the charts. You had the plan to long Ethereum, you take the plan. Bitcoin, of course, we know was bouncing also off of that 2-4 trend line on Friday. So there was a intraday support there on Bitcoin as well that we cannot forget about. I just want to say this, that this altcoin also that we long, Tao coin, which come down into the CC and point of control. This has been one of the best bounces. Because look at this, from the entry to current price, looking at a 30% bounce since Friday. That is a massive, massive bounce indeed. And that is one that we were ready and waiting for as well. As actually, I think I can show you here. Let me just try and find it. Where were we? There we go. That was the outline where we were looking for it to move down into the point of control and CC Fibonacci. And of course, that's exactly what it done. Point of control, CC Fibonacci. So just showing you like the plans and outlines that we do here on whether it's Tao coin, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's Ethereum, right? The plans that we do have are very nice. So this was something that we were looking at on Bitcoin to actually form this triangle that we seem to be forming now, with a larger move down after that Monday high. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Well, we've put in our lows here, and now are we going to see that DE reversal? So we were looking at this as a larger A, B, C, D, E triangle potential. This was obviously last week, and so Bitcoin is playing out potentially nice, right? With that A, B, C, well, up, you know, now we're trading above $109,000. So we're going to see if we can put in that DE reversal. Of course, early days. And there are a few key things that I will be looking at next. Number one, as I said it at the start of the video, but I do mean that it is key, to be honest. Like the way that the CME opens, again, in about 4 hours is going to be crucial. We are going to open with a gap to the upside on Bitcoin. It is a very high probability that that gap gets filled. Okay, that is undeniable. I would be very bad or lying to you if I said it wasn't a high probability. But what a lot of people miss out there is the speed that it needs to take. So a lot of people will just view the high probability, you know, and think, well, I'm just going to take a short trade because it's a high probability that the CME gap closes. Although that is correct, okay, we can absolutely get continuation first. And essentially, if you just short as soon as the CME opens, well, then you get the continuation, you get stopped out. Yeah, eventually we can come back down and fill that CME gap, but you'll have been stopped out of your short before that happens, right? So that's why I think you got to wait for like what I class as a good trade setup. But you know, what I'm saying with here is the CME gap absolutely key. So please do not forget it. And the way that actually lines up here on around that daily naked point of control, I think it's a nice confluence in terms of filling the CME gap trade, right? So yeah, next key things I'll be looking at is 100% right. The CME open tonight. Don't forget about it. You are going to have a gap to the upside. Gaps are very likely to be filled, but I will just emphasize that not straight away. So then we'll be thinking to ourselves, well, we are interested in a short. And I would prefer to see that with a continuation to the upside first. My first key level, of course, will be on this downtrend anchored VWAP. I really am annoyed that my templates here are actually a little bit messed up. I don't know what's going on here. There we go. I was so thinking that was so weird. Yeah, you see now the values are much different. So you always have to be changing these values because the default settings on TradingView, I swear they suck. Now you can actually see properly how that point of control lines up with the daily naked point of control. This is much more accurate values. Look at that, the daily on the value area. That's what I'm looking for. That's why I got my templates. So that's what I'll be looking for next. The downtrend anchor VWAP. To that point of control, if we're going to put in this as the lower high. Of course, this is then our triangle to trade throughout the week. This is a lower term time frame trading plan. I will emphasize that. And you know, I will say key information of how that CME gap opens tonight. Moving on, I will say this. I have a champions live stream tomorrow, which is for me a high term time frame swing trading plan where I go through the higher term time frame swing trades for Bitcoin. I'll be doing that tomorrow in the Champions live stream. So you'll catch me tomorrow. Of course, Igor live in the morning with another update. And of next week, I'm doing another altcoin update. My altcoin updates have been on fire. Of course, 2 weeks ago, gave the short trades prior to the 30 to 80% drops to the downside that we saw on many altcoins. So yeah, 2 weeks ago, I was giving all the shorts. This week, I was giving all the longs. Of course, as you all know, 2 weeks ago, all those shorts were epic. This week the longs have been pretty good. they're all in profits, all the trades. So like, yeah, let's just say I'm trading pretty well the altcoins. So if you want to catch my next altcoin stream, it is a members only stream for the champions. If you want to catch my swing trading stream tomorrow for the Bitcoin, well, that's also a members stream for the champions. So yeah, what a time to be a member. chartchampions.com. Hope you've enjoyed this. Hope it's been helpful, and you know where to get more if you want it. That is the updates in the Discord. That includes, of course, all the live streams, and most importantly, the educational content that we also give at Chart Champions, which is our main focus, right? The education. So yeah, no financial advice here. Hope you've enjoyed. Thank you ever so much, and you know where to get me if you want more. Cheers, everybody. Thank you, and that's me signing out. Goodbye. Cheers.